Hello everyone, welcome to more Demon Souls. Today we are doing Stonefang Tunnel, the Archstone of the Digger King. These are known as the Smithing Grounds. First off the bat, as soon as you spawn in, you're gonna wanna snag this crystal lizard. And pick up the item over here. This is probably the most vibrant of all the levels in the game, but it happens to be one of my least favorite.
Hello there. Souls. I trade fine goods for souls.
This is the Filthy Man. We take a look at his inventory, but there's not much here for us.
It's a nice wee place.
A lot of people choose to come to 2-1 before defeating Tower Knight in 1-2 because this level is ripe and brimming with upgrade materials.
Thanks for looking out for me. Where are you running off to?
But as a Souls veteran, I don't necessarily need those. Honestly, for newcomers of the game, I would probably recommend they go straight to 3-1 and grab the Crescent Falchion as soon as they finish defeating Phalanx. That weapon is especially useful on this level because most enemies on this level are weak to magic. Here we encounter our very first fat official. Many people were unhappy with the new artistic direction they took with his design. They made him look like a boomer from Left 4 Dead. I don't really mind. This is actually a fairly decent weapon for early on in the game. To have a crushing weapon. So, the biggest advice that I would give players who are entering this level for the first time is I would most definitely make sure that I have a piercing weapon. The skin on these enemies is very, very thick. It is quite reptilian and therefore scale-like. So you really need something that can pierce and get underneath those scales in these enemies. I actually really like the redesign on these enemies. For most of the redesigns, I'm rather indifferent either way. I feel like they serve their purpose. they made these guys a little bit beefier compared to the original. And I welcome the added muscle definition. They are miners after all, so I think it's only fitting that they're rather strong. This is an interesting case of misdirection. There's an ambush waiting the player behind the barrels. Most people would enter this room and attempt to clear out the miners, just as some doing. But if you venture forward too much, an ambush of dogs will swarm you. That's why I'm using range attacks here. One more step beyond that bloodstain is the trigger point. Make it 4 more steps. These dogs are not too difficult, but in a pack, they can make quick work of players. Knowing how to range your enemies and keeping proper distance is key to success. Now we deal with the second fat official. This guy can cast Fireball in either hand, so watch out. The fact that he is ambidextrous makes him extra dangerous. This next section is filled with tight quarters, and it makes it very easy to die. All it takes is one mistake. Especially with a weapon such as mine that can swing so widely. I made a huge mistake there by getting sandwiched between them. Yet again, I demonstrate how not to play Demon Souls. Okay. We're back in the same location again. This time I'll show you the proper way to play Demon Souls. Right now, I'm not even bothering with the second one. I am simply taking care of enemies one at a time, which is usually the best strategy you can ever do in these games. Try to aggro them one by one and play with their leashing range. Now that we're back on course, let's not have any more deaths, shall we? Here we have the third fat official. And the trick to this is you can actually cross this bridge, albeit by hugging the left edge, as it will collapse once you walk on it. I walked too close to the left edge, unfortunately. One thing worth mentioning with the miners is if you'll observe them closely, you will see that some have pickaxes while others do not. The ones with the pickaxes are especially aggressive and will attack on sight. This is an NPC phantom teaching us how levers work. The miners without pickaxes are not as aggressive as the ones with them. And another thing worth pointing out, this one right here has a sack. And the ones that possess sacks drop upgrade materials. Take a look at this guy. Wonderful. They are great to farm for low level early game. Now that we cleaned out almost all the enemies in this area, we will soon be heading towards that grate that we opened up, and you will see this level's shortcut shortly. One more sack enemy to go. No choice but to jump back down and go around. Thankfully, it only takes a matter of seconds now that the area has been cleaned out. In this next section, we will be introduced to new enemy types. Here we have the fire lizards, some type of salamander, I believe. These lizards are also weak to piercing damage. That is where we must go. This is a tricky room for newcomers, as they might not fully see the inevitable danger that awaits them. Many young, naive demon slayers will charge into this room without any forethought whatsoever. And as soon as they get sandwiched by the dropping down lizards, that is where we will be going. They meet their demise. These new miners are probably the most dangerous of them all, as their weapons do flame damage. Luckily, there is not too many of them, so it's not something that you have to worry about too much on your playthrough. Once again, we find ourselves outside, and the area looks rather familiar. If we look down, we can see that this is the beginning, where we started. Turning the lever reveals a shortcut back to the beginning, but more importantly, unlocks this NPC. This NPC is very important for crafting special boss weapons. But we won't talk to him today, because we are on a mission. As soon as we grab this shiny first, can never resist treasure in this game. Neither can you. We all have a little patches in us. Returning back into the mines, we will go down the only path currently available and face more tight corridors. This next section can be somewhat tricky due to the terrain and the enemies contained therein. In this room, there are many things to watch out for. Those items can only be reached by dashing across the boards, which do collapse. The only way to get back is to return from the fog gate. This is what you don't want to do. Instead, take the secret path around the corner and bypass all of the enemies. Once on the backside, we're able to grab a couple helpful items, and then we can do a sneak attack. One of the miners here will pick up boulders from that pile and toss them towards you if you try to progress down the path that we started on with the crystal lizard. This diversion is the best way to handle this situation by far. The steel shield is a great shield for newcomers who do not wish to parry. I used it on my first playthrough. Another tricky section with the salamanders. Very easy to get sandwiched in these tight spaces and meet your early demise. To make matters worse, we have more dogs. I almost forgot about the lizards here and almost met my own demise. If I hadn't cleared out the original ones, I would have been sandwiched. There should be one more dog down here. Now we are free to find a new illusion. And in doing so, we will make our way downward to another switch. The miners do a good job at blending in here, near all these pillars. So be careful when you come down here. Work on your range and make sure they keep leashing. What we are looking for is that switch down there by the message. Once we rotate that switch, the magma will drain and we will be able to proceed onward to the boss. Once the wheel stops, the water is diverted and it cools and drains the magma down below before we unlock the shortcut. We are now only minutes away from this area's boss. I feel like this area must still be pretty hot. That magma hasn't been gone for long. Down here we will face the last fat official of this level. The best thing to do here is to bait him and get him to detonate these explosive barrels. Otherwise they can and will be used against you. Another technique is to run into the room and take shelter by that wall up there on the front right. And then you can melee him. Stone of Ephemeral Eyes. Very helpful if you wish to summon for this fight. Here we begin to see the cobwebs, and this guy tries to trick us but fails and actually slips on piss in the process. There's a couple items to be had in this room. This first one up here is beneficial to some builds, especially people wishing to craft the blue blood sword, as I believe you can do so with the crisp blade. We are now at the final stretch. Can see many of Demon Slayer met their demise down here in these mines. Maybe workers too. Now it is up to us to test our mettle as we face the armored spider. For this fight, I mainly like to use range attacks. If you stay down this hallway, past the halfway point, you cannot get got with its triple fireball. Its single fireball is slightly homing, but it is pretty easy to dodge. Every time the armored spider rises above the opening to the tunnel hole for a brief second, like that, he's getting ready to shoot his web. His web comes fast, and it comes far, so be ready to dodge immediately when he comes down from above. There is also a place to hide up ahead by that front left pillar, and you can dodge almost everything that he can dish out. I believe only the oil spill will reach you over there. It's a good place to hide for players that are doing melee and don't want to get stuck running up and down the entire tunnel, wasting precious time. So the basic strat is to simply lock on, stay out of range, and dodge. Besides that, it's pretty straightforward. There are also a couple small alcoves on this tunnel wall that you can just narrowly squeeze into to dodge his fireballs and web. But I find it's best to just dodge on my own accord and see what happens. In this case, we got the victory. This is the hiding spot I mentioned for melee characters. There you have it, folks. That is 2-1 in almost its entirety. We left a couple items, but nothing too important. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.